So, testing. Okay, the microphone did not peak that time. Fantastic. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. How is everyone doing this morning? And speaking of morning, good morning, Asgard. Welcome to episode 25 of the Good Morning Asgard podcast. Yes, indeed. This live stream is uploaded as a podcast over on Anchor.fm to all major podcasting platforms. Today is going to be the final summer stream for the Good Morning Asgard podcast. And so, therefore, it's going to be an open forum show today. Also with our generic movie talk as well. Just picked up a couple of, not physically, but just ordered a couple of 4K Steelbooks from Best Buy. So I might talk about some physical media stuff today, show y'all what is currently available. There's some new 4K Steelbooks that are going to be available from Best Buy very soon, and also some that are still on sale for a little bit cheaper, which I think are actually pretty cool to look at and probably worth adding to one's collection. But before going any further, hello everybody, we are live on YouTube, Periscope, D Live, and on Odyssey as well. Good morning, everyone. We got JKD76. Good morning to you. We got Tina B, Empress of the Universe. Thank you very much, Tina B, for being here this morning. Should be one of the last early mornings, at least for the summer, as I start work back next week with some meetings and then students coming back. For me, I think as early as Thursday or Friday, and then having our first full week the week after that. So school is right around the corner. Summer is ending, unfortunately. But I'm going to be able to do a couple of things that I've been planning on doing for the summer. So big thing, of course, is seeing some movies. So I actually have a ticket to go see the movie Old today. So very excited about that. I'm going to try and do an instant reaction mini review for that, for all of my Keeper of the Bifrost level peeps and above on all the different platforms. Eventually, I'll do a full review for the channel. Still need to do a full review for the channel for the movie Pig that I got to see yesterday. So I'll try and get that out sometime today. But yeah, I'll be able to drop off. My pups are getting groomed today. So I'll be able to drop them off first and then go check out the movie before picking up baby Thor. Elizabeth Lyons, welcome back to the chat. Thank you very much for being here this morning. Thank you for listening to the show. Please be safe out on the road. Bifford the Hobbit, what is going on? Trent Johnson, welcome back to the chat. Glad to have you here. Andrew Hoyle, who is a member, says the one downvote was from Leslie Jones as she jumps on her Ghostbuster tantrum trail. Yeah, she can't be happy. She can't be too happy about this new Ghostbusters trailer, which I was finally able to see. I just did a reaction for my Keeper of the Bifrost people, and that's uploaded for members on YouTube, on all the different platforms. And of course, I get hit, and this is the reason why I don't do trailer reactions in general, and why I'm only really willing to do it for Keeper of the Bifrost level people, because I got hit instantly with a copyright claim. Normally, they release those. Normally, it's, hey, this is clearly a case of fair use. All I'm doing is reacting to the trailer, and it's a reaction. And at the end of the day, you should be happy that I'm promoting this trailer at all. I mean, it's never made any sense to me why these companies have these Autobots that just do that, especially when they release these EPK files. They release these files for people to be able to host. Why do you think you have the trailer hosted on several different websites? It's because they release it for people to be able to use. And it's just kind of crazy. Like, unless someone is actually claiming that the content is their own, I don't see the problem. I don't really see the issue when it comes to doing a reaction, especially a reaction that is unmonetized and is not even public. I feel like there should be a much better system. Like, again, I think that one way that YouTube could really fix its system is by not being so automated, by actually having companies be forced to manually claim videos, because that would, one, lessen the amount of claims by a fair degree, and two, it would actually ensure that more often than not, when a claim is made, that it's actually legitimate, because a human would have to actually go and find said video and watch it and see that, hey, this is not under fair use, or hey, this is not under X, Y, or Z. But unfortunately, they give credence to the giant corporations and companies, which of course is not that much of a surprise, knowing how YouTube works. But hey, one can dream, right? Hound3000, welcome back to the chat. Glad to have you here. Cacao and Cookies Minion, welcome back to the chat. Alex, what's going on, good sir? Thanks for being here. Yes, the ears are intact. Luckily, it did not randomly decide to hike up, which is good. Glad to hear that. The K-Man, what is going on, K-Man? One of the members on the channel. Thanks for being here. By the way, I have a few of my chosen. Mr. Roy left a comment earlier, which was not saved up on the restream chat that I'm able to post up. But shout out to Mr. Roy, also a member of the Chosen of Valhalla. I will say we're not going to do a Chosen stream this weekend. I have family coming in, and the schedule is a bit up in the air. And yeah, so not going to be able to do a Chosen stream this weekend. So we'll plan to do one for next weekend, which I know is going to be the Sunday before going back to full school. But hey, we work with what we got to work with. And Lord knows during the school year, it's going to be Sundays before going back to school. So we'll go ahead and get started with that next week. So for any of my Chosen listening to this now or later, Chosen stream will be not this weekend, but next weekend. Phonemo, what's going on, good sir? Watching over on D-Live. Thanks for supporting the stream over there. Alex Moore, what is going on? Thank you for being here. Good time zone, he says. Oh, I'm glad. That's why I do the 9 a.m. slot Eastern, because for me, it's not too early. I know some people disagree with that, but as a teacher, getting up at 6:30 every single day, even during the summer, it's, it's not nearly as bad for me or for most people, I feel. And I know that there are a lot of people who watch in the UK and across the world who are in different time zones. And unfortunately, a lot of the main streams that we tend to do, me, the Friday Night Tights crew, Phantom Menace crew, Geeks and Gamers crew, unfortunately, they tend to be late at night for us, which is middle of the night, incredibly early for y'all. And so I think it's good to have these streams, which are, at a nice time of the day. At a nice time of the day. And I am trying my best and doing what I can to try, especially if you're a member of the Geeks and Gamers crew and the Geeks and Gamers fan page and a supporter of the Geeks and Gamers crew, then I'm trying to get them to do earlier streams. Maybe during the school year, we can get like a Saturday morning stream going or something. I say that, and yet I've said so many things about trying to do certain things on Saturday morning, even myself. So we'll have to wait and see. There he is, Mr. Roy. What's going on, man? Thank you for being here. Alaric Harrison, what's going on, Alaric? Thank you for being here. Elizabeth Lyons, who is a member, says, I saw the trailer and cried. Yeah, there are so many great nostalgic moments in the trailer. It's what a trailer should be. It gives you just enough about the plot to be interested. And for anyone that's a fan of the Ghostbusters franchise, you're like, hey, this is Ghostbusters. This is the same universe. You see similar creatures, similar looking creatures. You have these connections to these characters. Whereas with Ghostbusters 2016, it was like, nope, it's almost like a completely separate universe. It has, I guess, a couple elements of the ghost, like at least with one of the ghosts. I think, Slimer was in that film, I believe. It's been so long, and I just don't care about that film to even remember if Slimer's in that movie. And then they bring back the actors, like Dan Aykroyd, to be people that are not connected to the universe at all. It's stupid. Plus, one thing I thoroughly enjoyed was that we got a little bit more background about who the young female character in the movie is going to be, and the connection that she has to Egon. And I think that makes the character make so much more sense, especially when you know who her other grandparent is, because it's not just Egon. Like when they bring in the other grandparent, I don't remember that from the first trailer, but I was like, oh, this girl was perfectly cast. It's a point now where I'm like, oh, this is perfect casting, because this girl looks like she could be the granddaughter of both of these people, and especially from a character perspective. So, yeah, going back to the initial comment that someone made, yeah, I would say that Leslie Jones is probably pretty upset because people are actually excited for this movie. This movie, even during pandemic times, I think is going to make more than what Ghostbusters 2016 made. Now, do I think it's going to be a box office smash? That remains to be seen, and that's something where I've mentioned this before. I don't know if any film is going to be able to make money at the box office in the current state of the box office. So even though I am excited for this film, and I hope this film does well, and I think a lot of us as fans, especially if the movie lives up to the trailer, I think, are going to go out and support this film as much as possible, which could have a big impact on the movie. But at the end of the day, this film is probably a pretty high budget film. I'm on the Wikipedia page and I'm not seeing anything specifically about the actual cost of the movie. Normally they have, if there is an official number that's been released, they have that number posted here somewhere. But I would imagine, especially with the visual effects in this film, that the movie probably cost somewhere close to $100 million, which means this film needs to make a fair amount. It needs to be able to make a fair amount back. Let's see. Looked like there was one site that may have had a initial number. And obviously you have to take this number with a grain of salt because it's coming from ghostbusters.fandom.com. So it's coming from one of the wiki sites there. According to this, the film cost around $170 million, which is, I think, a bit on the higher end of what I thought the movie would cost. But it's not too surprising when you take into account the amount of CGI that's going to be in this movie, which, by the way, the CGI I'm kind of mixed on based on the trailer. I feel like there's some elements that remind me a bit of Ghostbusters 2016, which had some really bad visual effects. And then there's other elements that I think are just a bit better because they're a little bit more limited. But again, that's kind of the problem with a lot of modern films, is that they overuse CGI, and also it's shot on digital, which means it's going to have that artificial look already. Even the film itself is going to have the artificial look. Remember, if you have any comments or questions, please put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment. @Odin lets me know you're trying to get my attention, and I will be glad to read said comment or question. That's all I ask. Trent Johnson says, did you say Z instead of Z? I did. I've been influenced by my UK and European brethren. I have. Also, I watched this one tech YouTuber, Techspert, who is pretty great. He's awesome. He's hilarious. He always cracks some funny jokes. Not only does he do great reviews of the tech he does, but he also has some great commentary to go along with it. But then he always says Z. And I listened to a bunch of other UK reviewers who also say Z. And so it's just become a lot more natural for me to say Z instead of Z. I don't know why. I don't get it. It's like aluminium instead of aluminum. It just makes sense. It just makes sense, I tell you. Cacao, what's going on? Says 6 a.m. That's sleeping in. Yeah, for some people, I imagine, especially if anyone works night shifts or gets up really early because they are, let's say, like maybe a trucker or something like that. Oh, I imagine 6 a.m. is still not that early at all. And as I said, it's not the earliest that I've ever gotten up in my life. When I was a swimmer, I mentioned this in another stream, when I was a swimmer, I was getting up at 4:30 every morning and then swimming for 2 hours. So I'd wake up at 4:30, start swimming around 5, swim from 5 to 7, and then go to school. So yeah, this is definitely not the worst that it's ever been. You know, getting up at 6:30, and then going to teach. Luckily, thank the Lord this year, because we made these changes before the CDC decided to start to backtrack on some of its desires for schools and for teachers. We were able to establish classrooms that were similar in size to what they had been prior to pandemic times. And so because of that, teachers like me who had 7 classes last year out of 8 slots, meaning we had 1 off period, I get my 2 this year, which is nice. And there's like 1 class in between. So it's nice because almost every single day, except for the first day of the week, because we're also changing our schedule this year. First day of the week, I don't have any days off, but then for the rest of the week, I have at least 1 period off during the day. So, but I'm happy because it's one of those things where at least I have that kind of downtime where I can get work done, or if I need to just detox, I can detox as well. Let's see. ZK-Man says, I've seen the new Ghostbusters a few times and still got chills during a few of the scenes. As others have said, finally a 3rd Ghostbusters. Yeah, finally this is Ghostbusters 3. And to be fair, Ghostbusters 2016, when you actually look at the film and look at the synopsis and the marketing, it's clear that it's meant to be a reboot. It's meant to be it's a similar universe, but it's not in continuity. But that's the problem with it, I think, is that if you're going to do that, it's got to be pretty darn good. And unfortunately, the only thing that movie did was say, oh, what if all of the Ghostbusters were women? That's essentially the plot of the movie is, hey, Let's take the Ghostbusters, successful 1980s franchise, and let's just make all the characters women. That I'm sure will be enough to make people happy. And then let's not just do that. Let's then also take the traditional female secretary character and have it be played by the dude that's Thor. Let's have the big burly guy actually be a complete idiot, even though when you go back to the original, I don't ever remember the secretary in the original Ghostbusters being a moron. Because guess what? She wasn't. In fact, she showed herself to be smarter than almost every other person, or at the very least on the same level intellectually as some of the brightest scientific minds. So it's just amazing to me that they thought that was going to work back in 2016. And not to mention, you brought in some of the most unlikable characters, like some of those unlikable people to play those characters. And really, when you look to fan bases, Ghostbusters 2016 does have a fan base. There are people that do like that movie and are sad that it's not going to get a sequel. I question those people as far as their taste in movies, but hey, they have a right to that opinion. But let me just say, it's a lot smaller than the fan base for OG Ghostbusters. And I would say a lot of the OG Ghostbusters fans are going to say, hey, I'm at least going to give this film a try because, hey, at least this movie is trying to respect source material, trying to respect the original, whereas 2016 was very clearly an agenda-driven movie, and no one wants to be preached to. No one goes to a movie to be preached to. They go to escape. That's why it's always been known as escapism. Let's see, Gary Banjo Sandwich, Bustin' makes me feel good. Don't know what that is or what that's a reference to. Walking 55, what's going on, man? He's a member on the channel. Good morning to you. Dragon Bricks, what's going on? Welcome back. Let us see. Biffer the Hobbit, tagged to say, your thoughts on Bob Odenkirk's rush to the hospital after collapsing on Better Call Saul set. This is news to me. That's awful. I pray that he's okay. I never want anyone to ever be hurt, especially, whether it's someone I like or don't like. So I hope that he's okay. I hope the situation in which this happened is not a serious one. So thoughts and prayers going out to him. This is the first that I'm hearing about that. I hope he's okay. Because I hate when anyone is in that kind of a state. Let's see. JKDBuck76 says, good morning and good morning all. Good morning, Odin. Thank you. Appreciate it. It's good afternoon and good evening to some people watching. Let's see. Trent Johnson, do you even American, bro? In certain ways, yes. I will say over the last year and a half, the more I've learned about the foundational American principles, and this is obviously a lot more suited for tomorrow's stream on the OMB report, but there is essentially a very anti-Catholic foundation. Not anti-Christian, obviously, but anti-Catholic foundation. And so there are some things I do take issue with. Let's see. Tina B says, High Council was discussing the CGI in the trailer, and they had mixed opinions, but some of it looks like a callback to the original movie. Yeah, I think that is definitely something to take into consideration. Obviously, you look back to the old school film, though, and it was a very different time in the realm of visual effects. And I think that original effects are important, or rather, I think that the original effects in the 80s Ghostbusters films was important because it was using the technology of the time, and I think making it look pretty good. The issue with modern filmmaking is that because we have so much technology, and because things have advanced so much and there's so many options, I feel that a lot of filmmakers, unfortunately, even good ones, fall into the trap of relying or over-relying on CG. So one of the benefits to the film like this is that it seems like there's going to be a good portion of the movie that is not CGI, ghost, etc. But for instance, there is the ghost that they show in the diner scene. I'm pretty sure, and again, I've only seen the trailer once, but I'm pretty sure it was a CGI'd ghost. And I'm like, no, that's the perfect time to do something that is practical. And the mindset I think that a lot of these filmmakers have is, well, since we have the technology to create these ghosts, let's just have all ghosts be CGI, because then there's a clear separation between the two. But what's great about the original effects was that they actually used a lot of practical effects to create the visual effects. They actually used props. They actually used molds. They used puppets. Like, they actually used physical stuff to create some of those effects. And so I think that that's an incredibly important thing that has been lost by a lot of modern day filmmakers. So I'm happy to see that the movie is going to be using hopefully limited effects, but at the very least that they are not the worst visual effects that I've seen, but they're also not the best visual effects that I've seen. But if it's true that the film cost $170 million, I expect better visual effects. I'm just going to be honest. Let's see. Andrew Hoyle. Will fix your vocabulary eventually. Ah, yes. Ah, yes, of course, good sir. Gary Banjo Sandwich says, UK vernacular is right proper English. Is it really? I feel like in some cases. Not all. JKW76, please pronounce this word, province. How you pronounce province tells us if you're American or an undercover Canadian. Province. Is there another way to pronounce it? Province? Do people say province? Province? I say province. Province. Do people say province? That just sounds weird. That just sounds odd. As that question for me is quite odd. JKDBuck76, who is a member, says, I refuse to watch Wokebusters 2016. Rather watch my grandparents make out and then watch The Last Jedi again. Well, JKD Buck, that I think tells us quite a bit. I think that tells us quite a bit about what's going on in that brain. Only a little disturbing. I mean, the movie's bad, but are you sure? Are you sure? Phonema over on DLive tagged to say, Odin, when does Ghostbusted come out? Ghostbusters 3. First, I thought you were trying to make a Ghostbusted comment. Ghostbusters Afterlife. I'd say, with the new trailer coming out and the incredibly limited release schedules that are going on right now with so many things being pushed back and redone over and over again, I imagine that the film can't be too far away. Because I feel like there have been a lot of movies where like trailers have come out, like official trailers have come out only like a couple weeks or so before films are set to release. I assume this movie is set for an October release. That to me would make the most sense, but I'm pulling that up right now because obviously remember that these are all subject to change. Based on IMDb, it seems to say November 11th is when it's expected. So as of right now, November 11th is when the US release is set to happen. And one thing we can say about this movie, which is both a good and a negative, is that the movie is not going to have a release in China, which again is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it means that they're not going to give the Chinese commies any money. It's a bad thing because it means that the worldwide box office is going to be artificially smaller because, for instance, with films like Fast 9 that I've mentioned, $215 million alone came from China. That film is at around 600 plus million. You take away China, it's only at 400 million, and you start to realize, okay, yeah, it's actually not that impressive. It looks better on paper. And in reality, it's almost better to not have a release in China because, yeah, you might get some money, but even at $215 million, they get, what, $50 million of profit because of the way that Western films and studios only will get 25% of their receipts. What I do think is pretty funny, though, is whenever you look at different different releases, you see the different names that it's been given in different countries. Canada, the working title for Ghostbusters 3 is Bust City. I don't quite understand why it's Bust City, but you Canadians are interesting people. Bust City. Quite interesting. In Germany, it's Ghostbusters Legacy, which I think is actually a perfect name because it's respecting the legacy of Ghostbusters. In France, it looks like it's being turned into SOS, which I find interesting. And let me see if there's any other. In the USA, okay. So the fake working title was Rust City. Okay. Well, I wonder why IMDb has the Canadian working title listed as Bust City. So it was called Rust City to throw people off when because people who don't know this, when films are being shot, they always will have fake names because let's say you have extras that are coming to a set. You don't want to have a sign that says Ghostbusters 3 filming this way, because that's going to cause some chaos. So you have these working titles in order to throw people off and for it to be hard to track things. But it's interesting that in the USA, it's Rust City, but in Canada, it's Bust City. Maybe there was another Rust City working title in Canada at some point. I find that interesting. But anyway, at least that makes sense. But I actually like Ghostbusters Legacy a bit more, because then also it's going to, I think, play into the concept that's being developed with the young girl in the film and her lineage and her connection to the original Ghostbusters in more ways than one. All right. JK76 tag to say, Busted Makes Me Feel Good is a lyric in the original Ghostbusters theme song. Ah, okay. Gotcha. I said the original Ghostbusters theme song, I can only ever remember, if there's something strange in your neighborhood, who you gonna call? Ghostbusters. Best use of that song, by the way. Look up Dancing Pumpkin Ghostbusters. You will thank me. It's one of the funniest things. Every Halloween, I have to watch that video because it's just so funny. Also, I used to do summer camps as a coach. And the summer camp that we did, we would have this event called the Culminating Event. And it was basically like a talent show that we'd have at the end of the year. And me and a friend of mine, we would always come together and create these fun shows. And it's amazing what we were able, because we were the coaches for like the 11 to 13-year-old group. It's amazing what we were able to, and we would do it with them. Like the biggest thing that we had with those kids, we were like, we will not make you do anything that we are not willing to do ourselves. So it's like, we're not going to try to embarrass you. We're not going to try and make you do something that's, that's meant to make you make you feel bad or anything like that. It's like, because we're going to be right up there with you doing it. So we actually at one point did a Halloween themed episode, or rather a Halloween themed show. And so we had a dance from Spaceballs. We then also had a dance from this as well. And we, I was pretty much kind of the choreographer, I guess. And we actually, I used the dance that the dude in the Halloween Ghostbusters Pumpkinhead song does. It was really, really funny. Oh, memories. Oh, memories. Gary Banjo Sandwich says, what the fudge, Ray Parker Jr. song for Ghostbusters? Oh, that I didn't recognize it? Hey, I've mentioned this before. My memory is not always so good. You know this. I've always made it very clear that I don't have the best memory in the world. Again, if you had mentioned the very beginning of the song, I would recognize that. But typically when I listen to that song, I have it on as like background music. Like what I remember from the song is... I'm much better with I'm much better with rhythms and general tones than I am with lyrics. And this has always been true. I have to listen to a song like 1,000 times before I can memorize it. It's always been a struggle doing theater, especially, is having to learn lyrics to a song. Like I have to listen to it so many times in order to get it. If I'm just looking at a page, because of my ADD, I'm not able to get that stuff memorized. So that's why when I was Harold Hill in a production of The Music Man, I actually listened to a rendition of Trouble. If you know anything about that musical. Oh, we got trouble right here in River City with a capital T and that rhymes with P and that stands for pool. In order to memorize that song, I actually listened to a version that was done by, oh my goodness. And then again, this is what I'm saying about my memory. I have to look up these things. And it's like one of those things where if I start typing things out, usually like that's when things can come back to me as such. Seth MacFarlane did a rendition of the song Trouble. And so that was kind of like the inspiration for, the characterization was inspired. The characterization that I did for that character was inspired by that. And I listened to that 1,000 times, not to memorize his inflections, but actually just to learn the lyrics. That's how I learn. And so if I listened to that song 1,000 times, I'd be able to say all of those things. Seth MacFarlane, yeah. Oh, no, I listened to the original because Robert Preston, I believe, was the original Music Man in the movie, too. I listened to his as well, but Seth MacFarlane, I think, had like the overall tone of the character that I was going for more, because he also did it more song. He did more singing in his rendition, whereas Robert Preston did more character. And I wanted to have it be more of a song, I guess. But anyway. Alrighty. Let us see. The Crafty Tyke. Welcome, good sir. Thank you for being in the chat this morning. Let's see. Dragon Brick tagged to say, unfortunately, that was correct, and hardly anyone knew about the anti-Catholic history. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people, when they hear that, they might say, I didn't even ever know that. It's even more creepy, actually, or more, you start to question things a bit more when you actually look into World War II a bit more. Because you look into the bombing of Nagasaki especially. One interesting thing about Nagasaki that no one talks about, it had the largest Catholic population in Japan. Now, obviously, that's not me or anyone else saying it was bombed for that reason. However, I think that it is one thing where you go after a lot of innocent people, many of whom are Catholics who would have been resistant to the concept of a God Emperor. You start to say, okay, why were these decisions made? You start to at least ask questions, and I think it's totally fine to ask questions. It's a healthy thing. Tina B says, the skeletal clerk behind the counter in the one scene was a practical effect, according to Jeff last night. Okay, as I said, I only saw the trailer once, and so I couldn't tell from my memory whether it was or not. But I'm glad that it's practical if it was. Rossi Shackelford, what's going on? Bifford a Hobbit, what's going on, dude? Bro, I did a trailer reaction for that film on Locals. You should be able to watch that, as I know you're a member over there. In short answer, yes, I am. I think it has a lot to look forward to. Laura Story, what's going on, Laura? The Modern Major General, good morning to you. It is quite early where she is in the world, because she's in that Cali time. She's in that Cali time. Andrew Hoyle, who's a member, says, I'm pro Vince. He was good in Dodgeball. Oh, Vince. What do you mean pro Vince? Vince Vaughn? We're not talking about Vince Vaughn in Ghostbusters. We're talking about Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd's not in Dodgeball. What are you trying to say, Andrew Hoyle? What are you trying to say there? Now, if we're talking about the movie Freaky, which I saw yesterday, which I still don't know how to feel, I think Vince Vaughn's great. I like Vince Vaughn. To me, the only misstep that he has made in his career was, I believe, he was in the remake of Psycho. And I'm not saying anything about his performance, but I'm saying he should have said, no, this movie should not be remade. I cannot have any part of it. The fact that he agreed to be a part of that and to try and replicate or take his own version of an iconic character like that is not something I can support. But seeing that that's really the only mistake of his career, I mean that's not the worst mistake that one can make. People have made much bigger mistakes in their career. I don't understand the whole Vince thing being brought up, though. Commenting is dangerous. Okay, I'll look back to your comments. Let's see. It says, have you seen the behind-the-scenes stuff for the prequel they made for The Thing? They made practical effects. The studio execs didn't like them, so they used crappy CGI instead, and it flopped. Dang, dude, no, I didn't. I didn't even know that there was a prequel for The Thing. By the way, The Thing is one of the movies that's actually now available on 4K, and I think it's on sale right now for 4K, which is pretty good. Pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I'll try and bring up some of the sales going on right now, because I did want to try and cover that at some point. Let's see. Dragon Brick tagged to say, as someone who learned English as second language, US version of English is not as consistent as the UK version. Yeah, it's not that surprising. One thing I did find surprising, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was going into an interesting subject. So, obviously, America is very unique in that we're not on the metric system. But they were able to explain how the metric system actually is not as sensible as a lot of people claim it to be, which I found quite interesting. And also that the metric system, when it was first being implemented, was actually one of the first steps taken in a globalist New World Order type mindset of, oh no, this is the only way, you have to do it. I don't know. Found that interesting. Maybe y'all know more about that than I do, but it definitely makes me question the the logic, because beforehand I was always like, no, I don't understand why we're not just like everyone else. But now I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's good that we're not. Maybe it's good. Let's see. Laura says, if they want to get people back into the theaters, they should have the stars of the movies show up at random theaters or other fun things like that. Yeah, I agree, Laura. And I would say that, at least from my experience when I was living in New York, it happened a lot more often than one would think. Because I remember I got to see an early screening. So this was before the film came out. It was actually a test screening. So they were actually doing tests on audience reactions to certain jokes. And it was so like official. You actually had these like suited guys in there with night vision goggles looking at the audience. And at first I was like, oh, maybe they're checking for making sure that people aren't filming anything since it was an early release of the movie. But then also it could be that they were also trying to gauge audience reaction and stuff. But anyway, for that film, it was awesome because all of a sudden, who comes walking down the aisle but Ben Stiller? And he explained the movie, explained where it was in the process. He'd explain how some sequences aren't finished yet, and it was really cool to see that. And then another time I got to see the film Source Code, which was a pretty great, like a sci-fi type film, Source Code, which was awesome. And before the movie, all of a sudden it's like, oh, y'all are in a very lucky situation because we have a special guest, and Jake Gyllenhaal comes walking down the aisle. He was the star of that movie, and he got to introduce it. So no, I think that would be a very good way to do it, but that wouldn't be enough. And I think this is the comment that is, I think this closely associates the box office talk we were having the other day about how stars don't sell tickets anymore. And I would say that stars going to premieres wouldn't sell tickets either. I think that what needs to happen is there needs to actually be a correlation and connection and relationship built up between studios and theaters. For instance, a lot of times what studios would do for their opening night movies in IMAX, for instance, would be, oh, if you go to see the IMAX, you get a movie poster or you get this piece of memorabilia or something like that. And I think that that was actually a good incentive. The problem was that they really didn't promote them all that much. Like when I was working at a theater, there were often times when we would just be given a box of, oh yeah, this is being given out for X, Y, or Z. And I was always very confused by that. Because I was like, this is something that should be very much promoted, and hey, get your free poster. And sometimes they would. You know, sometimes there would be studios that would put it in a trailer or put it in like a stinger somewhere and say, you know, free poster, limited supplies. That's the kind of stuff, though, they're going to need to start doing more of, or at least getting back to, if they're going to want to have this resurgence. But it's got to be the theaters and studios working together. The problem is the studios are so self-interested, and we see this very clearly with what's been going on with Disney, especially been going on with their Disney Plus releases, right? And how they've been pushing that more so than trying to push people into theaters or welcome people back into theaters. So I think that is something that would have a much better impact, because if I'm told, if you go to see this movie opening night, you get this, and it's like a special item or something, that'd be awesome. That could be really cool. And I think that you could have a lot of fun with it, actually, with older movies, because there are some films where you would go, and if it was a sequel or a reboot, you would go, and it's, hey, if you hold on to your ticket and use this code, you can get a free digital download of the original movie or something similar to that. That, I think, is something that could be incredibly beneficial, especially when it comes to films that are, you know, reboots or remakes, because you're already having a movie that's been paid for, theoretically, and so it doesn't really cost you a whole lot to give people going to the movies free access to a digital version. Not to mention, digital versions are not the best way to view or consume content either. So I would say that those would probably have a better impact overall, if I had to guess. See, JKD-Buck76 says, Ghostbusters trailer says, Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving. The Canadians are thankful in October. Yes. Yes, indeed. Oh, Lord. Will Gentry, welcome to the chat. That inappropriate comment of yours. How dare you? JKD says, Return of the Jedi was Blue Harvest. Oh, nice. Yeah, it's always fun to go to some of the biggest films and the fake names that they came up with for them. See, Trent Johnson says, I can't imagine you being a swimmer just because you would have to shave your beard. Oh, yeah, there was a time when I was clean shaven because I was at an all-boys school, and it was a Catholic private school, and so they were incredibly strict. and we would have to be clean shaven. The hair policy also, I couldn't have this. You couldn't be bald unless there was one student I remember who was around the time, he wasn't in my class, but he was like a couple years older than me, and that was the only exception to that, and it was because he had a condition where he couldn't. So obviously they make exceptions for stuff like that, or if no one at that time was going through any battles with cancer, but if a student was going through a battle with cancer, obviously they would make exceptions for that too. But yeah, you had to have over a 1. If you wanted to have a buzz cut, you could, but it would have to be over a 1. And basically, if it was shorter than that, you would have detention every single day until it grew back to the proper length. They would have the measuring stick and everything. It was a very strict school, but actually I thought that it was incredibly useful in my development because it taught me discipline. It taught me all these different qualities that I think are getting lost in a lot of schools today. And it's something that I think it has benefits. There's obviously some problems that can arise from it as well. I think that, no system is perfect, but I do think that it ended up having a lot more of a benefit than not. But yeah, there's a lot of things. I mean, older pictures of me, I think I look the same, but obviously that is not true. As my wife always tells me. It's like, you actually thought that this looked the same? And I'm like, yeah. Anyway, let's see. JKWX76 says, Ray Parker Jr. had to play Huey Lewis a lot of money for ripping off I Want a New Drug. Interesting. Punk Waddle is a member. What's going on, dude? Says, every time I sing, the rhymes with T starts with P and stands for pool. I get a funny look. I saw a live performance one summer. Oh, nice. Yeah. Oh, we got trouble right here in River City. The opening lyrics to that especially are incredibly tricky. Did you ever try and take and give an ironclad leave to yourself from a 3-rail bail? I can't even say it anymore. It was terminology where I was like, oh man, I don't even understand what's going on right now. And it's also a tongue twister. Very, very tricky song. Liquid Blake tagged to say, I was Marcellus in The Music Man. We can tour sometime. Nice, dude. Yeah, my Marcellus, it was double cast, and the one who I'm like the same age, I think he's like technically a year older than me. He had been the original Marcellus when the place I had done this show had done it years earlier. There were times when they would redo shows after so many years. So one, it was an honor just to be selected to be the Harold Hill, because when I had first done that show, I was just chorus. So it was really fun and cool to have that experience. But yeah, my Marcellus, he had been the original, so it was fun to play around and to play off of him because he had grown so much as well. So the character had changed for him a lot. So it was a lot of fun. See, JKD76, who is a member, says, supposedly Nagasaki was chosen because Kokura was covered up by clouds. Isn't that crazy? Like, isn't that insane that we decided to kill countless numbers of people who had nothing to do with what was going on because of cloud coverage? Like, it's one of those things where, especially with my students, it's always an interesting topic to bring up, because anytime you question, especially from a moral standpoint, a lot of issues and things that come up with World War II, the instant and gut reaction is to defend it, is to try to make sense of it. And I think that's incredibly interesting to have those conversations with students, because we oftentimes get a very myopic view of those events. As they always say, history is written by the victor. And I think it's important sometimes to be able to look at it from a different perspective and through a different lens, especially from a moral standpoint. Liquid Blake says, context, this province is province. It's a friendly place. You call it a province? That makes no sense to me. Makes no sense. Soul Extraction, what's going on, dude? Member on the channel, good morning. Appreciate you being here. All right, let's see. Trent Johnson tagged to say, it would make sense that there would be an anti-Catholic bias in America because the majority of the first settlers were Puritans, who was just another splinter in the heresy known as Protestantism. Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, that's a bigger, broader discussion, more so suited for the OMB report stream. But yeah, I mean, obviously that is something where it makes a lot of sense for that reason. Punk Waddle, I like Perry Chan's recent take on American Psycho, but I don't think that was canon. Nope. Definitely not. Definitely not canon. Thenotes Felicitas tag to say English is a language that lurks in dark alleys, beats up other languages, and rifles through their pockets for spare vocabulary. And yet there are so many people who want English to be a primarily used language when it comes to the liturgy in Catholicism. It makes no sense, especially when you look to the history. Dragon Bricks. Metric system makes common sense on paper, but I can't ever visualize it. Example, I know how long 1 foot is approximately, but I can't say the same for about 1 meter. Yeah, and the way they were breaking this down, I'd have to find out what the podcast was because I can't remember. It was incredibly interesting because they broke down also the logic, saying it's actually more logical to think of things in feet and miles, and also the historical reference to the use of that versus the metric system. And basically implementing, or rather trying to state that when you look to, I think it's traditionally called the English system, actually has a much deeper history than the metric system does. And I think when you take that into account, you realize even though metric system might make sense because you're dealing with, tens essentially, when you look at the combination, or rather when you look to the history and the development of the English system, even though it may not be that round number, it does deal with things in a way where you're able to break things down a lot more. Basically, the metric system limits the way you can break numbers and concepts down, whereas with the English system, you actually have a lot more flexibility in certain ways. Which I find that to be an interesting topic of discussion. Brian Barth, what's going on? Yeah, because I start school next week. We start meetings next week, so I'm not going to be able to do the morning stream. So yeah, the streams are the regular streams. The evening streams, those are perpetual. Those are school year, non-school year. Those are always perpetual. The Tuesday and Saturday evening streams, those are not changing. But the morning streams, the morning streams are coming to an end. So this is the last Good Morning Asgard stream for the summer. Now, we might have a random Good Morning Asgard stream throughout the school year. Maybe it'll be a consistent thing. I don't know. But last year, we only had so many episodes, and then we took a break for the school year. But again, the evening streams, those are not changing. Tomorrow will technically be the last morning stream that I'm doing for a while, or at least for the near future. And that's going to be the OMB Report stream. That's on the OMB Report channel. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. Punkwaddle says, now those pre-screenings have been accessed through a diners club or credit card promotion type thing. Not sure how many have been just open to the public. Oh, you mean so pre-screenings? Talking about just like premieres in general? That's interesting. Yeah, I don't really know much about it. When I used to work at a theater, typically early screenings would either be handled by the theater or it would be handled by a marketing company that was working with the studio. So we would have screenings all the time the week before or the week of, and they'd be early promo. They were called promo screenings. And usually it was tickets that were won through like radio shows or random websites where you put in your information and you'd, fill something out to get your ticket, and you'd be told, all right, we're giving out more than what the theater can hold, and it's first come, first serve. So yeah, I guess with COVID, they would probably have to change that policy a bit, but it'd be interesting. All right, over on Odyssey. Ooh, okay, got some action over there. Jacques Le Suave, thank you for watching on Odyssey, man. He tagged to say, did you hear Robert Barnes was looking into a possible lawsuit against Kevin Smith for misleading customers? The idea being people may have bought continued Netflix subscriptions based on his false statements of Masters of the Universe. I did not hear that. Robert Barnes actually is a supporter of mine on Locals. So shout out to Robert Barnes for that. I did not know. Was this when he was on with Rakita Law? I know that he recently did a show, I believe, with Rakita Law, which is also a fun channel to watch. But it's interesting. I don't know. Is there a precedent, I guess, for someone being misled in this kind of a way? Have there been legal victories here? Because if this is something that's never been covered, something tells me judges are not going to want to establish a new precedent, if I'm being honest here. I don't think a judge would want to be the first one to do it. So again, I don't know history when it comes to law, especially. I'm not a legal expert by any means. So it'd be interesting to know if there was any precedent there. He goes on to say here, Jacques Le Suave says, during his Sunday stream with Viva Frey, he mentioned it. Okay, interesting. I mean, yeah, if there's a precedent for it, man, all power to him. I would be totally okay with that. because I do think that I understand the logic, right? You are telling fans one thing. Here is what it's going to be. You've heard this. I can promise you it's not. Give it a chance, right? Like, so lying about what the show is going to be and what the show is going to consist of. So I can understand how you are very much misleading the people that are interested in your product and therefore leading them to buy a subscription or to renew a subscription, and therefore you're misleading them in that way. As I said, though, I don't know if there's precedent there, because I could totally see someone trying that and the case being thrown out because in the view of the court, they may not have standing. And that argument could come from, well, this is the nature of the beast where you're trying to protect your property, and when someone's leaking information about the property, you kind of have to lie about it. Otherwise, you're spoiling the surprise, you're spoiling, etc. So again, I don't know the precedent here. If there's precedent, then there could be a case. If there isn't, just using logic, again, I'm not a legal expert, but just using logic, I think it'd be very hard to find a judge that would be willing to essentially establish new precedent for that very reason, if I had to guess. Let's see. Punk Waddle says, i.e. the poster and goodies are given at pre-screenings. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I want to say, though, that's not universally the case. I did receive a comic book when I went to go see Black Widow. They did give me a comic book when I went to go see that. So they are still doing those. They are still doing those giveaways. I think it's mostly the issue where there's just not enough people going to the screenings on premiere night on Thursdays to justify sending the theaters across the country however many copies of the giveaway, I think. Because no, there are special events where they do other giveaways when they actually do like t-shirts and stuff like that. That is much more specialized. So let's see. Rusty Shackelford tag to say, I picked up Shaun of the Dead Hot Fuzz World's End Together on 4K for $20 a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I remember that was on sale as well. Yeah, the Cornetto trilogy. It's a fun series of films. Let me try and see if I can pull up the browser real quick. No, not that one. That's right. I have to open up the window. OBS is so silly. We can't capture the window unless it's already open and in the background. It's like, come on now. Come on now. Okay. So let's go ahead and transition this one. Boom, there we go. All right. So let's start to talk about some of the deals going on, since someone did mention Shaun of the Dead being available on 4K for sale. Here are some of the steelbooks available right now, and then we'll go into some more information. But yeah, as I mentioned, Quiet Place Part 2, I actually pre-ordered this one, so I'll be probably picking this one up today after I drop the dogs off for their appointment. So again, I just love the red design on that. Shawshank Redemption, this is a pre-order, so it's September. Shawshank is coming to 4K finally. So they have a steelbook. I don't really think I'm crazy about the steelbook design, to be honest, but I don't know. I'm a collector, so I still probably will end up buying it nonetheless, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm crazy about that design. Vertigo is available for pre-order on 4K steelbook. I think that's a pretty cool design overall, but I think I already have, because I bought there was a recent set where it had a bunch of 4K sales. So, no, I don't have that. Never mind. I don't have that. I thought I did, but I don't. I was thinking about buying it, but then I already had Psycho on 4K, and so I probably will end up buying this because it's a 4K release of a great Hitchcock movie. Let's see. Rear Window is going to get a 4K release. Nice. Very cool. So that's not available for pre-order yet. There are always these steelbook sales going on for a lot of the Miyazaki Studio Ghibli films. For $20, I would say that they're probably pretty good. If you want the Indiana Jones one. Okay, that's pretty cool. The movie is not that great. Spiral. That's a pretty cool design for a steelbook. I'd probably wait for this one. I don't think this one's going to run out. I would say you can probably wait on this one. It'll go on sale, and you can pick it up if you really want it. The Sting 4K steelbook. Interesting. Yeah, all the Harry Potters are on steelbook now. I think that those are very uninspired covers. And I already have the Blu-ray collection. This was one that I pre-ordered, though. Or rather, not pre-ordered. This is one that I just ordered, the Top Gun 4K steelbook, because I like that artwork. It looks pretty cool, and I don't already have that on 4K. John Wick Triple Feature is on 4K steelbook, too. $41 for 3 films is actually, I would say, a pretty decent deal, especially since all 3 of them are on 4K. I would get that. However, I do already own all 3 of the films on Steelbook. I need to upgrade a couple of them to 4K. But I can do that by getting the 4K much cheaper, the regular 4K, and then just putting the disc in instead. Oh, yeah. This is the one. Shout out to Matthew Hyland. He sent me this one. The Sicario 4K Steelbook. This is just gorgeous. 1, it's a great film. 2, this looks fantastic. So this is one that I'm actually going to be on the lookout at the store I'm going to today. Because if they have these in stock, I'm going to try and buy some to do on some giveaways. So be on the lookout for that. Probably going to do those on Patreon, Subscribestar, etc. for my Army of Asgard level and above. Let's see. Weathering with You, that was a pretty good movie. But Steelbook on just regular Blu-ray Steelbook for $28, could probably wait on that one, to be honest. Trying to see if anything else. So those are all the ones that are currently the most popular. But as far as deals are concerned, let's go to Blu-ray.com. Let's see what we got. So if you ever want to know the best deals going on in anything, Blu-ray.com is by far the best thing going on because it gives you everything. You can put it to Blu-rays, to 4Ks. You can set it to whatever it is that you want it to look for. You can have a certain studio setting. You look for new deals, lowest prices. There's always movies. So Mrs. Doubtfire on Blu-ray for $4, that's a steal. That's one of the best movies ever made. One of the best comedies ever. Robin Williams at his peak. Great film right there. $4 on Blu-ray right now. It's a great deal. And then you got a ton of other films available also for $4, for $5 too. So I always look at this every now and then because if there's ever a film that is likely not going to get a 4K release or wouldn't benefit much from a 4K release, you don't really need to have Mrs. Doubtfire in 4K. I mean, they might release that on 4K one day, but I don't really feel like that's a movie that you need to have on 4K. But anyway, so here are some of the deals, right? So you can get the entire RoboCop trilogy for $10 on Blu-ray. Seems like a pretty good deal. The Back to the Future 4K trilogy, $30. So that's $10 per movie. That's usually a pretty good deal. Rear Window is $22 on 4K. The Thing, as I mentioned, was on sale, $23. $25 if you want to these are all pre-orders, I believe. The Thing might be on sale. Let me see. Let's see. Can't tell. Let's see. Shawshank Redemption. That I know is a pre-sale for $25 on 4K. I think it's a pretty good deal. If you wait on that one, it'll be available still. If you really need slipcovers, you obviously want to always pre-order these because they run out pretty quickly. But $25, could be worth it. Quiet Place, first one on 4K, $15, is a pretty good deal. You got the Columbia Classics, which has a lot of films for $120. This is going to go down in price, though. So if you really want it, it's limited edition, so there aren't going to be a lot of copies available. But if there are, the price will eventually drop for some event. I remember I got the 50-film Warner Brothers collection, which is also limited. That thing went on sale for like $70 or $80 at one point. And I was like, 50 movies for $80? Do the math on that. That's incredibly good. The Criterion sale is ending pretty soon. So if you want to pick up some Criterion films, Time Bandits is a Criterion film for $20. Great film for $20. Trying to see if there's any others that... if you want a really cheap 4K, you can get Anna. I never had an interest in seeing it. You might. So if you want $8.50 for Anna on 4K... but yeah, there's a ton of films still on sale right now. So, and again, you can set this to Amazon, to Best Buy, to whatever it is that you want, and it'll be there for you guys. So anyway, those are some of the deals going on right now. And I think I'm going to try at some point to do an actual official video for that. Anyway, let's go ahead and get back to the chat. See, Punk Waddle says, did we talk about That's Why the Family Guy Star Wars spoof is called Blue Harvest? No, I don't think we did, and that's interesting. I never knew that before. Jacques Lesuave says, wait, it's pronounced 4K? All this time, I've been saying fork facepalm. Part of me kind of hopes that's true, that you were calling it fork. Oh, man. Let's see. Trent Johnson tagged to say, went to a private school that had the same rules. Yeah. Most private schools are pretty similar when it comes to restrictions and stuff like that. Gonzalo Bergali, who's a member, hail to you, says, that's why the Family Guy Star Wars special. So that is why. Okay, interesting. Yeah, never knew that before. Let's see. Jaggedy Buck. So what you're saying is that if I go to see Steven Seagal's Under Siege, I would get a digital copy of Die Hard. Not exactly, but I see what you're trying to say. Liquid Blake says, strict. We had to have over a 4 clippers length for our hair at a private Catholic high school. And then it says, but then the hair couldn't be longer than over years either. So yeah, we had the same thing too, though. If the hair went down past your eyebrow in the front, detention. If you had to get a haircut, usually teachers would say get a haircut, and then if you didn't get it by the next day, you'd get detention. So anyway, that was a demerit, essentially, is another word for it, I guess you could say. So couldn't be below the eyebrows, couldn't touch the ears, could not touch the collar. So yeah, we had a very strict, we had a lot more, there were a lot more things going on. I was just trying to think of things that were relating to me. Let's see, Punk Waddle says, The Music Man is really fun musical. It's worth seeing live, even though it was a free show in Houston at the TUTS Summer Run. Nice, yeah. No, it's a very fun show. It's a classic. It's fun. It is something that if you've never seen it before, it's worth watching. Absolutely. The movie, I would say, is a pretty good rendition, too. See, Trent Johnson had to say, they banned hoodies in my high school because students would use their phones in the hoodie pockets and they replaced them with crappy jackets. Yeah, we have a similar policy, actually. And it was not because of that. We banned hoodies, and it was not just hoodies, anything with a hood. And the reason why was because many students would put their earbuds in, put their hoods up, and then would try to hide it with that. And we are very strict, or try to be strict, about the use of earphones during the day, especially if someone's trying to take a test or something like that, because some students will have that going on, which, yeah, I understand the logic to wanting to limit that kind of stuff. But we're doing some changes this year. It'll be interesting to see how the students react and also how we, the teachers, react to some of the changes. Raycor8, dude, Raycor, I feel like it's been forever since I've seen you in the chat. Thank you very much for being here, dude. He says, hello and thank you from Germany. Best cynicism online. Have you already seen The Green Knight? Maybe. Cheers, all father. No, I have not. I saw the trailer. I had not seen a trailer for that movie until yesterday before Pig. And I will say, I'm not impressed. I'm not all that impressed by the movie. I'm not all that interested in the movie. I might still watch it, but yeah. Let's see. Jakety Buck says, what does Marcellus look like? What? Manuel D. Montalvo III. Thank you for being here, man. Appreciate the beard love. Trent Johnson says, got detention because I wore a hoodie instead of the crappy jackets. And again, for me, it's like if it's a rule and it's established when you're in school, it makes sense to me from a certain perspective. Bryant Barth says, thoughts on the atomic bombings? Do you think they had to be done, though morally it was wrong? That's the thing, is that we really can't know whether or not it was necessary or not. Because people who defend it will say, well, the war would never have ended. But when you actually look to what was going on, the war was essentially already over at that point. So I would say that and here's the other issue, is that we're looking at this choice from a 2021 perspective. We are looking at it from hindsight. And with the power of hindsight, we are able to look at the issue much more critically than what they were able to do at the time. And so the thing that I always try and bring up in my class, especially talking about the morality of the event, is it is difficult for us to look at this and try to criticize the thought process by which they reached this decision, because the world was so different back then. Now, we can still talk about the morality of the situation, because at the end of the day, you have many innocent lives that are being lost, and that's a moral problem and a moral issue. But the things that led to them making that decision, that's something that we don't really have access to. Because even though books have been written, accounts have been taken, letters were written, etc., we don't know what was going on in the minds of those people at the time when those decisions were being made to any level of a certain degree. So it's difficult. GoMacau79, hail and good morning, good people. Good morning, GoMacau79. Thanks for being a member. Appreciate it. Then Felicitas says, the crews of the planes had to live with what they did, and most have problems. Yeah. And it's not really surprising. And it's sad to say that, but it really isn't. I mean, think about it. If you were told the impact that your decision had on these groups of people. That's why there's a really interesting film, and I wish that didn't have the language it has in the movie, because obviously in the Catholic school setting, it's hard to really justify films like that unless there's some historical relevance to it. But there's a movie called Eye in the Sky, and it is about a person who is a drone pilot. He's given an order to bomb a facility, but there is an innocent little girl in front of that facility trying to sell clothing to make ends meet for her family. And it's this moral conundrum because he's a soldier and he has to take orders, but the order is something that he is directly taking a part in, where he is going to push a button that's going to shoot a rocket that's going to kill this innocent girl. And it's all based off of the percentage likelihood of a certain terrorist being in said building. So it really goes into the morality of, one, the drone war, which no one talks about, unfortunately, because there's been so many moral problems and evils that have occurred from the drone wars. And also, too, it raises that question, right, of how far do you take obedience? How far do you take orders when the order being given is morally problematic? So, yeah. I can totally understand how, especially someone looking at photos of the aftermath of the atomic bombs, would look at that and say, I did that. I was following orders can only really take you so far. Elizabeth Lyons had to say, are y'all wearing masks at school this year? The original plan before the CDC decided randomly yesterday to update their policy and the recommendation was that we would not. The policy that we had was it was going to be optional. If a student or a teacher didn't feel comfortable, they had the option to wear a mask, and we would try to accommodate them as best we could. But we were very clear, we're not doing online learning. We're not doing any of that this year because it had such a negative impact on so many people. Very few students could actually handle online learning. Very few students could actually handle it and be successful with it. And it makes sense. I mean, that's just because of the way that we learn, because of the way that we learn and are taught. So last I heard, that was the plan. Now, yesterday, the CDC updated once again, because they do it every 5 seconds, it seems like, their recommendations to say something opposite of what was being said before. And so it's going to be interesting because the way that our school system works, right, as a part of a Catholic school, is that you have to do what the diocese tells you to do. You have to do what the bishop and the school board, essentially, but it's ultimately the bishop, wants to happen. So I have not been given an update. I pray that we don't fall into the lunacy and the insanity of that practice again, because people just don't understand the psychological impact that this is having on these kids, not being able to see faces and emotion as they're growing up in these pivotal years of their development, among so many other things. So I really hope and pray that we don't fall into it, but it's beyond and above my pay grade. Now, I will say that if there is a change that happens, and it is one where there's going to be this mandate that occurs, obviously I'm going to very much vocalize my dislike of that policy. But at the end of the day, as a teacher in an incredibly non-Catholic part of the country, where my family is established, and we love this place where we are, and I love my school. I will say that very clearly. I love the community and the family. But it's going to be difficult. But because I'm in that difficult position, it's not that I can just say, okay, I'm leaving, right? I can't do that. And I don't really necessarily want to do that. So it's going to be, and that's really where I would say, please pray for teachers and students this year. Pray for everyone, obviously, but pray, in this context, especially for the students and teachers this year, because there are going to be some states, some dioceses, some parishes, some counties across the country that are going to implement draconian measures once again. And there are going to be a lot more people willing to step up, willing to resist. But remember, there's consequences for those types of actions. So please keep them in your prayers. because some people are in positions where they can't afford to resist. And Lord knows that they're probably going to be criticized for it. It's a tough position. See, Gomercow79 says, did Tennessee pass the face mask thing where only school kids and teachers have to wear masks? So as I said, Tennessee, to my knowledge, has not given anything. Tennessee has been probably a lot more... Tennessee's actually been very moderate on it. There were mandates for a time, and that really comes down to the fact that Tennessee, and especially the Chattanooga area, is very much more moderate than people think it is. So it's one of those things where people are voted for not because of the letter next to the name. In fact, for local elections, it is not legal for you to have the in a open primary for certain levels. You are not allowed to have a partisan affiliation. So you have to vote for the person, which I think is a really good idea and a good thing. But what it means also is that people are voted for because of their ideas. People are voted for because of what they plan to do. And people vote for those that are going to help build upon and make our community better. And I think, again, that's how it really should be. But because of that, it means you get some conservative members, you get some liberal members, right? There's a little bit more moderation there. But Tennessee, again, did have some mandates. City had some mandates, but it was, I think, a lot less forceful than others. And also, too, different local sheriffs as well, different local community. Because at one point there was a mandate and you had basically county police who were implementing and were going to implement the mandate. But then you had city police who the head of the city, the head of the city police said, we're not enforcing this. That it's unrealistic to enforce this policy. So yeah, it's something where I haven't heard anything about Tennessee doing it as far as, because also, and the thing that really bothers me the most about all of this is that they're doing these things based on recommendations. You know, the CDC is not mandating this. I wouldn't even argue that they're strongly encouraging it. I would just say they're looking at this and saying, hey, it'd probably be best if you did this based on the information that we have. But everyone takes these recommendations as if they are law. They take every word of Dr. Fauci as if it's the word of a prophet, and it's just not true. We should not view them that way. Gonzalo says, it's the imperial system. It's a matter of getting used to, I can visualize things easily on meters than miles. I disagreed with the split unless it's referring to different units. Interesting. Yeah. He then says, in metric, you can always split to lower units using powers of 10. Yes. But again, I was listening to a podcast that was defending the imperial or the English system that we have instead. And what was interesting about it, though, was it was bringing up the way that things are broken down. And it was bringing up specifically how you are able to essentially really break things down beyond powers of 10 and therefore able to do a lot more with it. And again, this is not my own thought. This is just what was being presented, but it was being presented in a way where I'm like, this just makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know. See, Liquid Blake tagged to say, the movie Drive with Ryan Gosling had a lawsuit based on misleading advertising. Really? Now, was that thrown out? Was that thrown out? What was the result of the case? What was the logic behind it? Because people get sued every day for pretty much everything, unfortunately. So I think the result of that's probably going to have an impact. Punkwaller, you have a good one, man. See, JKDuck76 says, was the comic book they gave you better than the movie? So the comic book they gave was just recapping everything that had happened with that character from the MCU. And then it was also changing the history a bit, because I was watching this event in the comic, and then it was bringing in a character who had not been in the previous movies early on, and yet they brought her in. I think it was like Scarlet Witch they had brought in. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I ended up throwing it away. So I didn't really read it with a lot of what's it called? I didn't really look into and study it. Andrew Hoyle, who is a member, says, oh, Star Trek Discovery, make it 2 copies. I bet you would. Liam Neeson's chin, welcome to the chat. Glad to see you here. Bryant Barth tagged to say, do you think digital will take over, or is physical media here to stay? Physical media is here to stay. The question is, are studios going to give up on physical media or not? The fact that you still have studios putting out 4K releases, Blu-ray releases, DVD releases, and now, of course, you have, Steelbook releases, special editions, shows that there is absolutely still a market out there for these releases. So, yes, I do think it is here to stay. Is it going to look the same years down the road? Probably not. And it's really going to depend on a lot of people. It's going to depend on these studios. Some studios are indicating they're kind of moving away from it. Other studios are being a lot more embracive of it. GomerCon79, who's a member, says, Nightmare on Elm Street and Pretty in Pink Steelbooks. Boom. Yeah. Again, not my cup of tea necessarily, but for some people, could very well be good. GomerCon79 liked the Halloween 2 Steelbook as well. Oh, man. Yeah, Chicago Box, welcome back to the chat. Prices were not bad at all. Thunderduck says, Guten Nachmittag. I still love Age of Ultron. What will Guardians 3 be like, and what will Thor be like? Still fat? I mean, I don't know why you still love Age of Ultron. Reminds me of the last chat when you were like, what do you mean it's not good? So Guardians 3, if it is like Guardians 1, it'll be great. If it's like Guardians 2 or worse, not so much. And yeah, based on what we've seen, I think they still plan to have Fat Thor, which is still the dumbest thing ever. Because they have a comic character who can get struck by lightning in this cool effect. They could have done this, and they should have done this in Endgame, but they didn't because they were idiots with that movie. But what they should have done is they should have had him struck by lightning, holding either Mjolnir or obviously the new weapon he has, and then all of the fat gets shed away. And they could have like a funny comment about it, but they didn't because it wasn't about that. GoMacau79, did you get the old yardstick across the hand in your young days? No, that was a little before my time. When I was growing up, I had the Christian Brothers, is the name of their order, and they would like pull by the hair, essentially. The worst they would do is like lightly smack you across the back of the head or something. But that was like the worst. My brother was in there at a time when they would make you, or maybe, I don't know if they did it for him or if it was for something he had heard before, but like kneel on rice, dry rice. And then the other one would be you would have to basically sit on the wall and like you're sitting on a fake chair. I forget what that's called. Like wall sits, I think maybe is what it's called. And you'd have to like hold a book out as well. And if you dropped it, you'd have to start over again or something. So yeah, stuff like that. Stormbreaker, thank you for letting me know. Immelman Ace, welcome back to the chat. JKD76, as a member, says, we will all answer to God on Judgment Day. Truman will have to answer for that. Such terrible power, FDR didn't even tell him about it. Well, I mean, they've already answered. Because there are the two judgments, right? There's the initial judgment that we receive when we die, and then, of course, there is the final judgment. Let's see. Dean J, welcome back to the chat. Glad to have you here. Let's see. Yeah, great state of Tennessee. Nico Blue 4-key. What's going on, dude? What's up? Melbourne. Interesting. I didn't know that you were one of my Aussies. Welcome back, Nico Blue. Glad to have you in the chat, man. Edward Perino, what's going on? In some ways, yes. In other ways, no. Depends on what it is. Trent Johnson, my county's public schools here in GA are requiring masks. Damn, man. Yeah, and that's something that you're going to see a lot of the public schools and counties, they're going to fall in line with the CDC for the most part. Then the only way that you're going to find counties that don't do that is if the school board resists or if parents rise up and kids rise up to say, no, we're not doing that again this year. You've done enough damage with this. Let's look at the actual numbers. Let's look at the actual risk factors here. So it'll be interesting to see that because that's going to be a fight. That's going to be a big fight. What the CDC did by implementing those guidelines, because again, they're just recommendations and guidelines, is they've just given, though, a lot of these power-hungry school boards and governors and mayors across the country the precedent to be able to say, oh, this is the recommendation. We're just following the recommendation. We're just following the guidelines. But by doing that for yet another year, a lot of people, more than last year, are going to be a lot more, all right, last year made sense. This year, I can't. And it's going to be interesting to see how many more people are now resisting these types of policies and what that means going forward as well. It's going to be incredibly interesting to see that happen. Over on Odyssey, Jacques Lesoive says, Adam Sandler, thoughts? He was hilarious back in the 90s, early 2000s, and then he's just, for me, stopped being funny. So, Old Prate, what's going on, says, bombing of Dresden was another morally wrong bombing. Tragic. Yeah, I don't know as much about that, to be honest, sadly. Thank you all for watching over on Odyssey. I appreciate it. JKDuck76 tagged to say, my wife teaches inclusion math at public high school. None of her students failed this year because she stayed on the kids and called parents when assignments were missing. Her coworkers didn't. And that was the problem that we saw a lot this past school year, was that in public schools, a lot of teachers, because they knew they were safe and protected because of unions, etc., didn't do a whole lot. There were so many. I think we found out, our principal last year told us that 80% of the public schools across the country had not been back in person learning, which is just such an insane concept. It was really the private schools that were the ones allowing for and bringing back in-person learning in any real capacity. And what we see is we see a lot of these students now, especially in public schools. It did not skip private schools, by the way, because the first year, right? Remember, the second semester of early 2020, right? That's when a lot of people fell very far behind in private schools because we switched to online learning, and we did online learning for the rest of the year. That caused a lot of people to fall very far behind. And you're going to see a lot of that happen. You're going to see a big falling behind across the country in all different types of schools. But it was, again, the private schools that were the ones that were willing to resist it. That's why I'm hoping we see something similar happen as well with these new guidelines. I'm hoping that there's resistance here. There may not be resistance when it comes to, higher ups, but I'm hoping that parents and students together will speak up and say, no, this is not okay. We can't allow this anymore. We've done enough. Thunderduck says, I will always like Age of Ultron, not just to tick you off. I hate the humor and inconsistent tone from serious to comedic in Thor Ragnarok. And yeah, I totally respect that. I personally like it. I think it's funny. But I understand anyone that brings up objective flaws with how it especially compares to the source material. I've always said that. All right. The Craig Lee Lawrence Experience. Welcome back. His girlfriend's a substitute teacher. Dang, yeah. It's going to be tough because you're not just dealing in this case with students. You're dealing with parents. You're dealing with school boards. You're dealing with risks to career now as well. I mean, there's so many universities across the country. There's so many school systems across the country that are trying to mandate vaccination. And what's so troubling about it is that I think there are some even Catholic groups that are doing that. And if you know anything about the development of all of the currently available vaccines, all of them have been tainted by abortion. And as a Catholic, when you have that type of knowledge, it's very difficult to morally justify that decision. Now, ultimately, it is a prudential judgment, but it's very difficult. And so you look to that, and then you also look to now how the entire narrative is changing. And I just want to make it very clear that I am not a medical expert. I'm not a medical expert. Please consult your doctor before making decisions. Also, consult your own conscience as well before making decisions. But it's so troubling to me to see this big push of you have to get vaccinated, you have to get vaccinated. And then what's happening? Oh, beforehand you'd get vaccinated and you were told, okay, now you no longer have to wear a mask. That's now been reversed. They're now saying, no, even if you've been vaccinated, you should wear a mask now. And it's like, why? And now we're being told, oh, it's because there's a chance that you could still get it, and now there's these new variants, and now we're getting we're already getting the entire premise for the next year and a half, 2 years being built up of there's going to at some point likely be enough variants out there where the vaccines are not effective against. And it raises that question. So then why should we get them if they're not going to be effective against these new strains? Like, there's already this moral question that I have that is the primary and concrete reason as to why I, at this point, refuse to get one. But it's at a point in time where things are not making any sense. You can't say you have to get it, it works, and then at the same time say, but nothing changes even when you get it. Oh, there's still a risk. That's illogical. And it's been on full display as well, because remember, you had the Texas Democrats who fled the state to try and stop legislation from passing there. All of them were vaccinated, and yet several of them came out COVID positive. And obviously the logic being used and the argument to be made is that, yes, but you're going to have a better chance of fighting against it because of receiving the vaccine. And I understand that to an extent. But then you also look to the fact that just like with any vaccine, there's going to be risks as well. There's going to be reactions that people can have to them. To mandate that someone receive one, especially, and the bigger issue here is the fact that this is something that is not statistically a deadly virus, or rather an incredibly deadly one. Again, when you look at almost all the ages together, you're still looking at a 99% survival rate. When you look to the kids involved here with the school decision, the flu, according to stats, again, I'm not a doctor, but according to stats, it is more dangerous for kids to get the flu than COVID. Obviously, it's more dangerous for older adults and for those that are immunocompromised to get COVID than the regular flu. But when you look at the numbers, it's not much more based on the information that we have and the fact that we can now look back and we can break these things down. So the fact that we are at a point now where we are having this discussion once again, this backtracking, it seems to me a lot more clear. I think it's hard for anyone to really be able to say otherwise, that this is all about control. They've seen, oh, this is how we can control people. This is how we can stop people from doing anything it is that we don't want them to do. We use this sense of fear. And there are so many people out there that are still afraid. And again, there's a lot of them that I think have a right, everyone has a right to be. It's their own life, it's their health, it's their family's health, right? It's something where I totally understand why anyone would. But then when you just look at the data and you look at what's being reported by the same people that are making these recommendations, you're like, this just did not seem to really coincide and make any sense of what's being said. Anyway, Borg, welcome back to the chat. Glad to have you here. Appreciate you being in the chat. Trent Johnson, thank you for the $5 super chat. Says here, peace out everyone in Odin, praying that you get the school started on the right foot and hope your bishop uses his brain instead of being a sheep. Well, thank you, Trent Johnson. I appreciate the kind words. Thank you for the super chat, man. And yeah, I hope and pray that everyone across the country, students, teachers, everyone, is able to, especially this year, just look at what's going on and say, what can we do that will best serve the kids? When it comes to a school perspective, what is going to best serve the kids? Because to me, if the issue is concern over older teachers, immunocompromised students, there are plenty of things that can be done in the age of technology that we have to be able to accommodate those situations. But to say a totally healthy kid who has an incredibly low risk of getting or having any negative impacts towards them because of the state that they're in, that they have to be treated in the same way or do the same thing that someone who is actually at risk. It's just not sensical. And what it's going to do is it's going to create just more tension and just so many more issues. But thank you for that super chat, man. I appreciate it. The Craig Lee Lawrence Experience tagged to say, do you think another lockdown will happen? They're going to try. Yeah, absolutely. You're already seeing them lay the groundwork for it. So I think my prediction is, and obviously my predictions are worth nothing, but my prediction is that you're going to have some states that will go forward. You're going to have some states go forward and implement mandates or try and lock things down and do these various things. But I think what you're going to see is this time around, you're going to have a lot more resistance. You're going to have a lot more people fighting this time around. And it's going to be interesting to see where those fights happen and what the results of those fights are. So I don't know exactly what is going to happen, but what I think is going to happen is that there's going to be an attempt made at some state levels. There's going to be some general federal level request, but it's going to have to be implemented by the states. And it's going to be incredibly interesting to see what the state response is and what the citizens of those states' response will be, because I have a prediction that you're not going to have the same level of compliance that you did last year. Because last year it was, all right, we're still learning things. We're still trying to make sense of things. We're willing to do what we have to do to try and decrease the amount of people who are going to be impacted by this. Now, a year and a half later, we know a lot more about it. The CDC itself already has these numbers out, which show, okay, in retrospect, we probably should have and could have done things differently without much variation in the end result. And so I think that is going to be something to really look into is the differences that we're going to find, because we're going to find differences in the response this year. Nico Blue says, I'm not from Melbourne, Odin. Someone asked in the chat about your state. Hey, Tina, great to be here. Oh, yeah, clearly I'm from Melbourne. Clearly I'm an Aussie, right? Andrew Hoyle, as a member, says, call Chick Norris, I assume that meant to be Chuck Norris, and the rest of the Texas Rangers to get them back. Seriously. Thunderduck says, all this anoric virus is BS. Big hoax like swine flu in 2009. PCR test is laboratory test, not actual medicine. Check Rainer Fulmick on YouTube and Dr. Bhakti. Well, I think, is one of those persons the one that created the PCR test? Because I know that the PCR test can be manipulated, and the person who invented the PCR test even said you can manipulate it to basically give you whatever result that you want. Now, obviously, I think that there's a level of trust that people will have, and this is just, again, why a lot of people probably are, have been more willing to accept these things, because there is you don't want to think, and I understand this, you don't want to think that everything that the government, that your government does is for your, harm, right? You don't want to have that in your mind. And so a lot of people have been resistant to that, saying, all right, I don't want to fall further in that. But I think a lot more people, again, are going to be a lot more resistant this time around. But again, as far as it being, again, when we use the language like with hoax, it's like, no, people have gotten sick, people have died, and it's been from something that have shook. And I know this because there are people that I know who've worked in hospitals who have seen these things, and these are symptoms and cases that they have never seen before. The fact that we have that and we can confirm that shows me that there is indeed something that has and is being caught by millions of people. The question is about how we respond. The question is about, could things have been limited by having certain drugs, having certain treatments available that are not available worldwide because of various restrictions that different health groups, right? Obviously the U.S. has its own health association that makes rules, right, with the FDA, Drug Administration, right? Every country has something different, has different leniencies given, right? But yeah, it is something that I think we need to understand in the proper context. We need to be very, very careful with our language. Again, I don't know if that was the intention of the comment, But I just want to make it very clear that there's clearly something that is going on, but it's more so the response where there is a lot more misinformation than in what was actually going on, if that makes sense. All right. GMonkey76, what's going on? Tag to say, I'm just going to identify as whatever the CDC says shouldn't be vaccinated and go on with being normal. Yeah. Again, I'm just going to look at the information, look at what's going on, and then be like, all right, I'm just going to move forward. Live life. Edward, thank you very much for the $5 super chat. He says, I'm sorry to hear about what Disney did to your son. They went to humiliate a six foot tall blonde man. Demoralization and indoctrination is true. I know. Can you believe what they did to Thor in Endgame? Nico Blue 4Key says, and 4Key says, thank you for the super chat. Thank you, good sir. He says, gonna watch Bear Grylls to prepare for the future. Yeah, seriously. I think that there has to be some level of, obviously don't go necessarily full prepper. If you want to, obviously that's up to you. But I think that there has to be some level of knowledge there. Andrew Hoyle, thank you very much for the super chat. He says here, looks like we got through the stream without mentioning the Tomorrow War. Hopefully no one will bring it up. Fun fact, so I do voices for my dogs, and if you've been here long enough, you've heard those voices before. And the joke that my wife and I are having right now with our dog River is because she's always freaking out. She's always nervous. She loves to be next to you at all times and everything. She has some separation anxiety and stuff. So the joke we always like to make is she always thinks that it's the Tomorrow War. And so it's every day. It's like, well, it's the Tomorrow War. And if it's not today, then it'll just be tomorrow because it's the Tomorrow War. So, all right, we need to start to wrap things up. So I'll get to some last comments before we head out today. Let's see. Snorpipus Cuber, what's going on? It says, how old humans and other quitters was out in the rain driving. Well, hope that you are being safe. Jarkai, what's going on? Thanks for being here in the chat. ZK Man, who is a member, says, hoping any lockdowns are after I move, because I know they will definitely do lockdowns here. I won't be moving to Tennessee till the beginning of 2022, but I will soon be in a state less likely to do lockdowns. Exactly. Or at the very least, they will be a lot more, or a lot less restrictive. And it really depends on the county you're in. It depends on the city that you're in, because every county can be different. And that's, again, one of the cool things about Tennessee is that there is a lot of diversity of opinion in the state, more than I think what people think, especially in some of the areas. Thunderduck says, what government has ever done anything good for their people? Border immigration, crime, drugs. It's one big club and you ain't in it. And again, Thunderduck, I think that is an opinion that a lot of people have, but at the same time, I do look to, again, I'm not saying that the system's perfect. I'm not saying that I even defend the system. It's definitely not the best system out there. But to say that no one who's ever been in a position of power in government has never done anything good, can't quite go that far. Bruce got the good vibes going. Andrew Hoyle says, driving, playing golf in the rain, only God can stop me now. Can't stop me now. Gonzalo says, what surprises me always is the corona numbers. They never include the number of ICU bed available and occupied. Lockdown should always take that info into consideration. Well, also, too, even the WHO, which is not a trustworthy organization because they're funded by China, even they said lockdowns don't work. Lockdown should be a last resort. And the only last resort that it even fits would be like if people were literally going out into the streets and dying. That's the only time that would make any sense at all. And even then, depending on the country you're in, you could have a violation of basic principles of constitutions of various countries. But yeah, we're not, unfortunately, we don't think logically. Everything that's been going on the last year and a half has been based on emotion. It really hasn't been based on factual data, because when you look at factual data, you start to realize, oh, there's a discussion. If you're basing it off emotion, there's no discussion, because emotion is subjective. And who are you to criticize my subjective view, right? You see how there's a bit of a difference there? So that's the issue, is that we need to start moving to a more objective conversation than a purely subjective one. I think too many subjective emotions have influenced the decisions across the country. And we need to have a much more objective one, because I think there is a fair discussion to be had about the way that we respond and the way that we go and move forward. And I don't think forcing people to go against their morals, to go against their comfort level even, is good at an objective level. Right? Choice is a very important thing. It's an important part of our society. It's an important part of our culture. And to take that away is incredibly problematic. Anyway, we'll go ahead and wrap things up there. Let me check over on Odyssey. Okay, I got a couple things over there. Odyssey, thank you, Old Prate, for the Hyper Chat donation. He says, I'm with you on this. The entire situation with this virus and vaccine thing just feels like there's some sinister side to all of it. I'm not sure there are any vaccines that are mandatory. Are there? So in some cases there are, for children especially. So let's say you want to send your kids to a school. There are certain vaccines that they would have to get. But they're vaccines that make a lot of sense because they're vaccines for things where if a child, especially a young child, were to get it, it could cause some very serious problems and issues. So there are, but again, they're for things that have caused so much harm and damage. The issue I find is that we are essentially raising what is, to me, the equivalent of a flu shot to the level of a OMG, we have to get this vaccine, which based purely on the numbers alone is just nonsensical. Again, just looking at it from an objective standard just doesn't make sense to me based on numbers and data. Thank you for that hyper chat. Jacques Lassalle says, I wish people could think long-term and big picture instead of just in the now. If we allow the government to force an experimental treatment upon us for the level of threat, then we no longer own our own bodies and can have anything done to it in the name of Well, here's the big thing, Jacques Lassalle, as far as the sentiment of what you just said, I think that what is absolutely going to be used by this and what you are going to see a bunch of people, especially in government, especially in power, is they're going to say, hey, you know how we all just felt this threat level because of the virus? We need to have the same approach to climate change. Do not be surprised if that is coming down the pipe, depending on where you are, depending on where you live. That is something that is going to happen. It's a discussion that I think is already happening. You've already actually had people who said, you know what? Actually, the lockdowns were very good for the environment. So get ready for that. Get ready for that. And if not that, I would say the first step that will probably be taken is get ready for every single flu season going forward, since now we're all hyper aware of numbers and we have now established that numbers can scare us. Get ready for some numbers to start being thrown your way about, hey, we need to handle this. The flu is a crisis that we've never established before, but now we are. And so now we're going to make you have to wear a mask every single time for these periods of months during flu seasons, etc. Get ready for that. I think that would be probably the first logical step before anything else more severe than that. But yeah, it's not going to be very long until the discussion changes away from COVID into something else entirely. But they're going to use this. That's why they talk about the strains every single day. It's why they talk about the variants and they talk about the effectiveness of vaccines, et cetera, every single day, because they want to continue the same level of, hey, don't forget fear. Don't forget fear. Anyway, thank you all very much, though, for being here today and for the support and love today. Please make sure that y'all smash that like button before y'all head out. Still got around 50 people watching, so please smash that like button. Before we do head out, again, shout out, thank you, Odyssey fam, for being here today. Appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my YouTube members who are at the Army of Asgard level and above. Again, part of the perks of being a member on YouTube at the Army of Asgard level and above is that your name gets shouted out at the end of every live stream, specifically the Good Morning Asgard streams, which, again, this is the last Good Morning Asgard stream for the summer, but also on the main shows as well that we do on Tuesdays and Saturdays as well. So I want to give a huge shout out to, get these levels right, huge shout out to Fetigator, Gonzalo Bergali, Soul Extraction, Nico Blue, Forkey, George Moilo, Mondo Spieler, Grimm's Math, Riff Magos, Wicked Plumber, Sean McD, Gomer Kyle 79, Your Muslim Uncle, Kara Tharp, Dadman Walking 55, M Tax Shark, Forever Sci-Fi, Rosie G12, Andrew Hoyle, Orange Hat Reviews, Jay Stowe, and Aiden Vickery. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much for being supporters of the channel and for many of you being in the chat today. and for all other members on the channel too. If you are a Keeper of the Bifrost level member on any platform, Patreon, Subscribestar, YouTube, or Locals, check out the latest video I have up there. It is a reaction and commentary on Ghostbusters Afterlife trailer number 2. You can also find some videos from yesterday where I do a review for the movie Pig, my instant thoughts on the movie Pig. And also, you will find the latest podcast episode that I did with John the Flick Pig Flickinger, where we talk about Black Widow, Space Jam 2, general movie discussion, and also take your Q&As as well. So check that out. I do apologize for the audio version. Unfortunately, Locals, if you're watching it rather or listening to it on Locals unfortunately does not allow for episodes longer than an hour. And in order to get it to an hour, I tried basically in Audacity, which is an audio program, to speed it up. And the first one I did was the speed up without the sound fixing. So it's chipmunks. I think it's hilarious, so I uploaded that anyway, but I did put there that it's a funny chipmunk style instead. So if you want to listen to that, it is sped up with some chipmunk sounding voices. So hey, if that's something that you might... There is also a video, though, that was posted, and again, it is an unlisted video for YouTube that you can watch and listen to the podcast there as well. Hopefully, Locals is able to fix that issue. Subscribestar has a similar issue where it has to be a certain size, so I've only been doing the video podcast up on that platform. But yeah, anyway, if you want to find links to any of the things that I've mentioned, check out the link in the description. It is the Willow link. You'll find it with WLO in the link at the very beginning. It's called the Willow link. And it just has links to all social media platforms, to the website, anywhere if you want to follow me or support the channel. All of those things are available. Anyway, you guys are awesome. Thank you so very much. Going to watch your Blu-ray playlist, says Nico Blue. Thank you, dude. Hope you enjoy them. I have to do another Blu-ray update at some point because I got a ton of movies that have been sent to me by MVD Visual and Arrow Video, and then I'm going to be picking up some steelbooks pretty soon too. But anyway, thank you all very much for your love. I'm going to go eat some food. You guys are awesome. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you again for supporting the Good Morning Asgard podcast this summer. Hopefully it'll be around at some fashion for the school year. If not, we'll see you in the morning next summer at the very least. You guys are awesome. This has been a lot of fun. I've always enjoyed these streams. Next stream is actually going to be tomorrow on the OMB Report channel. It's a separate channel, OMB Report. It's on YouTube and Odyssey. And we will have a stream talking about the news, politics, and faith issues of the day exclusively. So probably going to continue this discussion that we were having today. It was an open forum, so I wanted y'all to be able to get those questions out there. So if you want to continue that discussion, have more conversation, go check out that channel. Daniel Thorne over on DLive. Yes, food, glorious food. You guys are awesome. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my July Patreon and Subscribestar members. Andrew Hoyle, Biffer de Hobbit, Brian P., Dion, Don Bruno de la Mancha, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, It's a Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toone, Jonathan Carney, Laura, the Modern Major General's Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina B, and Tina Bojan. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on Patreon, and also to my Subscribestar members, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, John B, Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J. Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK Man. And I also want to make sure to shout out my Locals members. I am now available over at locals.com, and I've got 2 monthly supporters over there. The first of my local supporters is Goblin Squatch. Shout out to you, good sir. And also, I now have a second supporter over on locals.com, and that is Robert Barnes. Shout out to both of you very much. Thank you very much for supporting me on that new platform at the Keeper of the Bifrost level. If you want to find out more information about that, go check out my Locals page. You can find the link in the description, and it tells you everything that you would get in that Keeper of the Bifrost level, which is right now the only level available on that platform. And I also want to make sure to shout out any new Patreon members, and for right now, I want to shout out Mondo Spieler, who is my newest member over on Patreon. And I also want to add my newest Locals members, Cats App and The Real It. Thank you very much for being new members and supporters over on Locals. Thank you all very much for being here today. And if you want to have your name shouted out at the end of every single live stream and video on the channel, please make sure to check out the links in the description of ways that you can support me over on Patreon and Subscribestar as well. It gives you access to things like giveaways of Blu-rays, 4Ks, and digital codes. Also, access to a podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger, where we have a lot of fun. We also answer Q&A questions as well. And also you might get access to the Chosen of Valhalla level, which gives you access to a once-a-month podcast exclusively where I bring on you to the main channel with everyone else who is at the level, and we all just talk about movies, pop culture, and tons of fun stuff like that. And also, of course, Tina, who is the Empress of the Universe, is going to give us tons of reviews of movies and also maybe a couple of awesome rants here and there as well. So if that sounds fun to you, make sure you go ahead and check out those links. Again, you're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.